Tonight, someone you love is going to die. Not literally, not today, but somewhere in your mind, you already know it's coming. You've built entire rituals around that fear without even realizing it. Funerals, flowers, photos on a mantle. But here's the strange part. None of that started with you. It started over 100,000 years ago, in the dark of a cave, with a body curled into a shape no one had ever seen before. You assume ancient humans just left their dead where they fell, dragged them out of the camp, forgot about them. That's the story most people carry around without ever questioning it. But the real answer is far stranger. Long before writing, long before agriculture, long before anything you'd call civilization, ancient humans were already doing something no other animal on Earth had ever done. They were burying their dead on purpose, and they were doing it with intention. Picture a cave in what is now northern Iraq. The year, if you could even call it that, is roughly 60,000 years ago. A body lies in a shallow pit, knees pulled up toward the chest, arms folded in tight. This is not how a body falls. This is how a body is placed. The site is called Shanidar Cave, and it became one of the most debated locations in the history of human evolution. Researchers found clusters of ancient pollen near several of the skeletons. For decades, the theory held that flowers had been laid on the body before burial. A funeral, in other words, with actual flowers. Imagine that. A gesture so human it feels impossible that it happened before humans as we know them even existed. Later, some scientists pushed back. They argued the pollen might have come from burrowing rodents, dragging seeds in from outside. Maybe, but even the skeptics agree on one thing. The body itself was positioned with care. Someone chose that posture. Someone dug that space. Someone decided this moment mattered enough to leave a mark. And Shanidar wasn't alone. Travel south to what is now Israel, to a site called Qafzeh Cave. Around 100,000 years ago, bodies were buried here, with red ochre pigment and deer antlers placed beside them. Neither of those objects served any practical purpose for a corpse. A dead body doesn't need pigment, it doesn't need antlers. So why add them? Because somewhere in the mind of the person doing the burying, this wasn't just disposal, it was communication. A message sent to nobody in particular, and yet meant for everyone. This person mattered. This life meant something, even after it ended. Here's where it gets even stranger. In South Africa, at a site called Border Cave, archaeologists uncovered the skeleton of a child, buried roughly 74,000 years ago, with a small shell ornament placed near the body. A shell. Deliberately chosen, deliberately placed, for a child who could not have understood, at the moment of death, what any of it meant. But someone did, and that someone acted on it. Anthropologist Paul Pettit has spent much of his career studying exactly this question. Not just when humans started burying their dead, but what that shift actually represents. According to Pettit, deliberate burial marks something enormous in the evolution of the human mind. It marks the moment a species stopped treating death as a simple biological fact. It marks the beginning of symbolic thought. The idea that a person could continue to matter, continue to mean something, even after their body stopped functioning. Think about what that requires. You have to imagine a future where you are not present. You have to imagine other people remembering you. You have to hold a concept in your head that has no physical form at all. Identity, legacy, loss, none of those things can be touched. And yet ancient humans were already building rituals around them tens of thousands of years before the first written word. So why the fetal position? Why curl the body up like that, again and again, across so many different sites and cultures? One theory, favored by several archaeologists studying Paleolithic burial customs, suggests the posture echoes birth. A return to the position we all started in, tucked and small, as if death were simply the mirror image of arrival. Another, more practical theory suggests it was simply easier. A smaller pit, less digging, less time spent exposed to predators or exhaustion. Maybe both are true at once. Maybe practicality and meaning were never separate things for ancient humans. Maybe the two ideas lived in the same gesture. What's clear is that these choices weren't random. They repeat. Across continents, across tens of thousands of years, bodies positioned with intention, objects placed with purpose. Red ochre, again and again, showing up on skeletons from very different parts of the ancient world. almost as if it carried the same meaning everywhere it appeared. Some researchers believe ochre symbolized blood, and by extension, life itself. A way of marking the body as something that once held vitality, even after that vitality was gone. Others believe it may have marked status or protection or simply visibility, a way of making sure a burial site stood out against the pale stone of a cave floor. You don't have definitive answers. Nobody does. But you do have a pattern. And patterns tell you something true, even when the exact meaning stays hidden. Now here's the part that should really unsettle you. Neanderthals were doing this too. Long dismissed as primitive cousins of modern humans, incapable of complex thought, Neanderthal burial sites have forced anthropologists to rewrite that story completely. At Shanidar and other locations across Europe and the Middle East, Neanderthal remains show the same deliberate positioning, the same care, the same signs of intention. This means symbolic thinking about death wasn't unique to Homo sapiens. It appeared separately or in parallel in at least two different species of ancient humans, which raises an uncomfortable question. Is the fear of death and the rituals built to soften it actually older than our own species? Older than us specifically, but woven into something deeper, something shared across the entire human family tree. Sit with that for a second. The instinct to mark death as meaningful may not be a cultural invention at all. It may be something closer to a biological inheritance, a trait passed down through hundreds of thousands of years, expressed differently in every era, but rooted in the exact same impulse: the refusal to let a life disappear without acknowledgement. Anthropologist Ian Tattersall has argued that these early burial practices represent one of the clearest signs of a fully modern cognitive capacity. Not just tool use, not just survival instinct, but the ability to conceptualize something abstract, something invisible, something that exists only in shared belief. Death as meaning, not just death as event. Now think about what you do today. You photograph the people you love. You write eulogies. You mark graves with stone and name and date, so that even after the body is gone, something remains that says, this person was here. You light candles. You wear black. You gather in rooms together, in silence, just to feel the presence of a shared loss. None of that is new. None of it was invented by any single culture, or any single religion, or any single century. It stretches back through Qafzeh, through Qafzeh Cave, through Shanidar, into a version of humanity you'd barely recognize if you saw it walking toward you. And yet, the impulse is unmistakably yours. So tonight, when you think about the people you might one day lose, or the moment your own name might be spoken for the last time, remember this: you are not inventing meaning out of nothing. You are continuing something that began before language, before agriculture, before cities, before almost everything you'd call civilization. Someone, tens of thousands of years ago, knelt beside a body in the dark and decided it mattered. You're still doing the same thing. You just don't always notice it. Tonight, someone you love is going to die eventually. And somewhere in your mind, in a place older than memory itself, you already know exactly what to do about it.